I think to all of you that you came to my speech, and for the honor that I have one of the keynotes. It's a great honor for me. I reduced my own speech on some examples from the Balkan Peninsula, Southeastern Europe, because this is my passion, and I'm also happy for this huge introduction. I didn't know so much about me exactly. The last book, you mentioned already the last book, which I not have seen even. So you are very, very updated. Let's go now to the Southeastern Europe. It's not so far away, actually. From the Austrian perspective, Balkan starts more or less here where we are. And let's go to our structure today. I'd like to make a short introduction concerning the most important language varieties and languages in Southeastern Europe, which are in a kind of minority situation, focusing on some examples from the Slavonic, Slavic, and Romanian Romance world. I'd like to push these focuses on the two Slavonic varieties of Banat Bulgarian, kind of old Bulgarian spoken in Romanian and Serbian part of the Banat, and the Krashovan, Karashevski, a kind of Serbian/Croatian spoken in Romania, most of this, and some parts of Eastern Serbia, and the Romance varieties of Aromanian, spoken in Greece, Albania predominantly, and the Timok Vlach, very close to Romanian, spoken in Eastern Serbia. For all of these points, I'd like to point out some aspects concerning the history, the distribution of the varieties, concerning the tradition, if it is written or not, and by whom and since when, concerning the minority status, the endangered men yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and some perspectives. After this, we should have a kind of discussion concerning which languages and situations are dominating our varieties we are speaking about, and if there is a support or a possible support, and by whom, and which is the potential for a change or revival of these parts. If there is enough time, we should discuss it, because I do not want to come with proposals and concrete ideas what we should do for these varieties, but we can develop some of them together. Let me start, no wonder, with an introduction. Southeastern Europe, or the Balkan Peninsula, I think we can emphasize it even more in a superlative way than it is written here, is maybe not still of the richest areas in Europe, but maybe the richest area in Europe concerning its linguistic diversity, but many of these varieties are highly endangered. Let's start with the languages which are not having a state which claims it is our language. This is, for example, the Judaismo, the language of the Sephardic Jews who came from the Iberian Peninsula around 1500 into the Ottoman Empire in the southeastern European peninsula. And this is probably one of the most affected languages in southeastern Europe, the Judaismo, the majority of whose speakers were murdered by the Nazis. And we found very few speakers today in the Republic of Macedonia. In 2003, Victor Friedman found about 5 and 10 fluent speakers. Survivors of World War II, too. And the situation is somewhat better in the cities of Sarajevo, Thessaloniki, Solun, Saloniki, and Sofia, and Sarajevo, and Bucharest maybe. But the best situation probably is in Istanbul, as we have a lot of younger activists of Sephardic or Judaismo. Of the remaining stateless languages is also Romani, the language of the Gypsies, of the Roma, and other groups called Roma, and Horachai, Kalderash, and so on. We have 3 Romani varieties in southeastern Europe, grosso modo, and concerning the 3 distinct places and the origin of this, they have also different kind of endangerment, of course. All of these 3 varieties are ecologically fragile, and it remains vital as long as the speakers suffer the social marginalization that is effective as the physical isolation, segregation. So we have to differentiate into different Romani varieties. In southeastern Europe, the most common and not endangered probably today is the Vlach Romani. Quite stateless is quite stateless. I'm not sure if we can say it in English, but it's not actually stateless because there is exactly the state of Romania which claims that these are our minorities, but the Balkan Romance varieties are quite stateless. The Aromanians in northern Greece, southern Albania, small minorities in the Republic of Macedonia and southwestern Bulgaria, From there, they immigrated 25,000 to Romania during the Balkan Wars and the World War I. More or less officially, Romania considers this group and the second Istrian Vlach, half an hour from here, and the Megan Vlach in Central Macedonia as speakers of Romanian dialects, and it does receive no support beside from the occasional folklore production. We can discuss the situation of this, but it is important that discussing the quite stateless situation and the Balkan Romance, I call them Balkan Romance and not Romanian varieties, has to do with the second point I would like to emphasize, that we have a group of varieties which are Balkan languages, but they are related to Balkan nation-state languages, and others which are spoken in the polities and the surroundings where the dominant language belongs to a different linguistic group. So I prefer to put the Balkan Romance as a part of the separate languages and to speak about Albanian, Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, Montenegrin, Macedonian, Bulgarian as a group of South Slavic varieties, spoken in non-Slavic polities, Turkish varieties and Greek varieties. Of course, here we can find the standard language always to which we can make comparison, much easier than in the Balkan Romance examples before. Albanian varieties you can find, of course, in Italy and in Turkey, but the Balkan Insula is our focus, so we have to see the huge group of Albanitica in Greece, first of all, which separated from the main body of Albanian speakers and migrated to what is today Greece, central Greece especially, about 1,000 and so 1,000 years ago. This had been pushed into the brink of extinction in the course of the past 60 years, so you can find, of course, many speakers of it, but very old. The South Slavic varieties is a difficult chapter, as we find them in every country in southeastern Europe outside of their mother-speaking country, as there is, for example, Goranski, endangered in Kosovo by Bosnian and in Albania by Albanian, although the relative isolation of the villages is impeding the process. There are several Slav Macedonian dialects outside, outside of the Republic of Macedonia, in all neighboring countries, as there is Albania and Greece, but also in Turkey, for example. Pomag, in brackets, or how do you say these signs, in Bulgaria is considered Bulgarian usually, while in Greek and Turkey, since all its speakers there are Muslim, it is giving way to assimilation to the Turkish language, even in Greece. The Banat Bulgarian is the part of the Eastern Slavic languages, which you can hear in Romania and less in Serbia. We will focus on this language later. And the Bessarabian Bulgarian, a huge minority group of southern Ukraine, with many speakers today, but also endangered in the Ukraine and less in the Republic of Moldova. Turkish varieties, we can find some in southeastern Europe as reminiscence of the old Ottoman population. It is usually West Romanian Turkish, remained quite vital as a home language despite schooling in standard Turkish, but at present it is in retreat owing to greater freedom of communication. Gagauz, the Turkish or West Turkish language of the Christian minority in Southeast Europe, has official support in the Republic of Moldova, where we can find the Gagauz Yeri autonomic part of Moldova Republic, but not elsewhere, where it is in retreat, as for example in Greece, Ukraine, Russia, and Bulgaria. A lot of Greek varieties can be found outside of Greece, on all Balkan countries. Most endangered is the Cappadocian Greece from central Turkey, which is now to be heard in some parts of Thessaly in Greece. The Tsakonian, which is the only dialect that does not belong to the ancient Greek Koine, but probably from Doric Greek, and also some other varieties as Thracian Greece in Romania, Saracen Greek in Bulgaria. This is just a short oversight, and to make the confusion perfect, let's have a look on the modern map and the old map. This is the Legendre map. It's a French-German cooperation map made in 1876, and you can see very beautiful focus map on different regions. For example, here the northern part and the northeastern part of the Delta Danube, for example. But first of all, what is interesting for us, the peninsula of Southeast Asia and Balkan Peninsula, where you can have an impression where and how many Turkish minorities has been at the end of the Ottoman Empire. These red parts are the Turkish minorities and Tatar minorities over Bulgaria, the Dobra region, also in central Macedonia, what is today Greece, and Thessaly as some examples. Whereas you can find the Greek speakers, of course, much more along the coast, the shore, even in what is today Turkey, the Marmara Sea and the eastern part of the Aegean Sea. You cannot find the differentiation between Bulgarian and Macedonian in this time, so the Bulgarians go large and huge into the what is today Greek part of Macedonia and Albania, and the mix of the Bosniaks, Serbians, Croatians is also with the same color in this map. This is just to have a small impression concerning the small islands of different languages with a total different color than the Romanian blue. You can find the Aromanian Vlach colors in southern Albania and what is now northwestern Greece with a dark kind of violet. But let's go to the nowadays situation with a map made by the Austrian Institute of South European Studies 10 years before, where you can find not the actual, today's frontiers, but it's one of the best maps you can see at once, all the minorities which are officially recognized by the states, as there is, for example, in Romania, the huge minority of Hungarians and the small minority of German speakers. As we can find, especially in the northern part of Serbia, in the Vojvodina, also Hungarian minority and some German-speaking minorities and some southern Slavic minorities also. When we come to the violet Albanian-speaking territory, up or down here, and the Greek-speaking and Turkish-speaking territory. Of course, you will see immediately where are the Romanis, where are the Safards, the speakers of Romani and Giudesmo are not included, as it was not possible to include these populations in the map. And also the minorities we will discuss today are not included, most of them, as they are not making up more than 3%, and they cannot be shown. For example, you see in the Romanian-Serbian region of Banat, the minorities of the Serbs and German speakers, but not the two villages of Bulgarian speakers, Banat Bulgarian. Not even the you see the you see the Karashevsky speakers among other Serbian and South Slavic speakers, on which we can focus later. But when you see the other two projects we would like to focus, you do not see the Aromanian minority in Albania or Greece, as they are not officially recognized. But you can see the Greek minority, the Greek-speaking minority, which is smaller than the Aromanian-speaking minority in Albania, but it is official in the statistics. And the last one I want to mention today, and we will focus on, is in eastern, where is it? The eastern part of Serbia, a very small Romanian minority, which is consisting in Vlach speakers, the Vlasi, and the Romanian speakers with Romanian schools in the northern part, especially in Vojvodina. So you have to know that many of these speaking varieties cannot be, not even in this quite good map. To show how things change between the first map and the second map in the last 100 years, let me show this map from the same institute. Author is Joseph Wolf, and he shows the ethnic structure between 1890 and 1992, based on the national statistics and also the Austrian and Hungarian statistics in that time. We will find the same traditional logics concerning the colors. Usually the Slavs have green, and the German has a kind of blue, and the Romanians have kind of red and rosa. So we can see this map 120 years before, 1890. You can imagine that here is the nowadays frontier among Hungary and Romania, Romania and Serbia, and just focus maybe on 2 or 3 colors and 1 or 2 cities. Here is the violet Hungarian speaking group with the biggest city of Szeged. Here you can find the German-dominated city of Temesvar in that time, what is now Romania, with this big blue, which is more than half of the city, German-speaking in Temesvar, followed by Hungarians and Romanians. And maybe you can see also Belgrade, which is in this time, of course, already Serbian dominated, but has huge minorities. Let's check the next 22, 50, 75 years. Once, second, fourth. Besides the demographic growth, which is impressive, you can see also total ethnic and linguistic change. Maybe once more to focus a different city. When you focused on Szeged, it's a little bit boring. It's Hungarian, remains Hungarian. But what happens to the blue minority of the German speakers in Romania? And what happens with Belgrade or Timișoara, which has the most interesting changes concerning the invasion, I would say, of the red colors of the Romanian, because Romanian were settled here. And of course, until now, it is only Romanian-dominated city, and we can find minorities. Yeah, just to see this kind of change in 100 years. Let me now come to the 4 small focuses of 2 Slavonic and 2 Romance speaker groups or varieties. Banat Bulgarian is called by the speakers Balkanski. The glottolog is Pali 1272, but it is not clear that this is meant really the Balkanski of the Banatski Bulgari, and we have to change it, or to propose a change in glottolog, because there has been the Bulgarian language of the old heretic group of the Balkanians, and we are not sure if this Palki, the Pali, is given as a really good point for the Banat Bulgarians. Anyway, we speak about Balkanski, if this is a group in which we are interested now, and let's see if they are in our map. This is the Wolf map. We can see there are 2 green points, very difficult to see in this map. 1.5 villages are left today. Maybe this map is better to see the number 6. This is the Banat Bulgarian, and we will come later to this Karashevski minority. Banat Bulgarian, they continue also on Serbian territory, but most of them are living in 2 villages in the Timișoara county, 1.5 village, the last of the half village died 1 year because that's why it's for me a half village, and in Vinga in the Arad county. Concerning the history of the language, we have a very impressive document concerning the history, Historia Campus, which is in Latin from the beginning of the 18th century, Historia Dominus, and it describes the coming of the Bulgarian, who came out of Bulgaria at the beginning of the 18th century and settled here probably because they wanted to remain Catholics. You know, the majority of the Bulgarians are Orthodox, and here a big part of the Catholic Bulgarian group came and settled into the Banat, and is described by this Historia Dominus document in Latin language. You can find the testament in their language in Latin letters. You can find a list of the bishops and a list of the cantors in their churches. So there is a written tradition which is quite impressive when you see that they left Bulgaria more or less as analphabets in that time, with no link with the Cyrillic tradition, and they started to have their own written language with a little bit Hungarian logic in orthography. And when you check the list of the bishops, for example, from the city of Chișinău, the village of Budești, as it is called today in Romania, you can see that the list does not include typical Bulgarian names. There are German Catholics, Hungarian Catholics, or even Slovak priests who came here because they didn't have own Bulgarian priests. Just to look a short view into the biggest of their church in Budești, or Starvišnov, the biggest village with very good fluent speakers of Banat Bulgarian. But most of them, of course, are old, so when you go to the church, it is not a very vivid language wherever you go. You have to find the speakers, but they are in that village very vivid, and in one more village, Breștea or Briștea, in their language, they also speak quite good until today. We can find, in continuing this tradition of Latin alphabet among the today's publications, for example here, Banatski, Bulgarski, Prikasti, with a very strange orthography for Slavists, as the R means O and the Ch means K. but you can use to it this. This is not a Slavic tradition, it is a little bit Hungarian style combination, but they use it consequently. This is the predhurta, predgovor, the word before. How do you say this in English? Anyway, Bulgaria, of course, tried to support the groups as they are Bulgarian brothers, but they were not brothers enough to continue this until today as they are Catholics. And you can find a little attempt of Bulgarian schools in today's date. And the school, for example, of Bulgarian language is called after the holy Svints and the holy of Cyril and Method, which is not very typical because it's not that important for the local Catholic population in the Banat. But they use Latin letters. Or you can find the old signs, the old indicators of the villages, Drumbun in Romanian, Srecampat in local Bulgarian, very similar to Croatian, Serbian, of course, and the Bulgarian variant, Lekput, very different. But when you see the new indicators of the villages, Lekput disappeared, and the even more newer, they include only Romanian and Bulgarian within Latin characters. I will stop with this small insight in the Banatski-Bulgarski because there will be a next speak focusing on the Banatski-Bulgarski. Andrea Pascal will have the speak tomorrow when you are interested. I think you will focus on that subject, so please let me go to other minorities. The next one is the Krashovan or Karashevsky, who calls their language also Nashi, as most of the South Slavic world does, our language. The glottolog is clear, Kara 1507, and we can use the same map to show where they are. This was the Bulgarian minority, and here we find the Karashevsky minority. Only in Romania, in the mountainous forested region of Rijeka, in the Apusen, and this is the mountainous part of the Banat. 6 villages, from which 1 is not speaking, and 5 are good speakers, but of what language, what dialect, what religion, and what identity. They are again Catholics, but the variety they spoke is much closer to East and Southeast Serbian Torlački govori than to the Croatian. But the speakers, as they are Catholics, identify more, of course, with the Croatian literature and language as they are Croats. But we made this experience when we speak or sing with them, or when we come with a Serbian car to their villages. Everybody likes to express also that they prefer or they love Serbian music, but they prefer Croatian linguistics, and of course the Croatian church as they are Catholics. So this is a quite difficult situation, and the science, of course, we should reduce, and we should not discuss about if this is Croat or Serbian. It is Karashevsky. But just to draw your attention that they are also included in the Bulgarian Atlas of Linguistics, of the Bulgarian Atlas of the Bulgarian language, as from the Bulgarian perspective, all the Shopik and the Torlak dialects, where Bulgarian meets Serbian, belong more or less to the Bulgarian sphere. And as we find many Karash and many influences of Southeastern South Slavic, this atlas intends also to include the Karashevsky as a dialect, not of Bulgarian, but very similar to Bulgarian, as it is a part of the Torlački dialect group. So actually we have transition varieties, and maybe we can focus on 1 or 2 words to have this transition, to understand this. When we see the Torlak varieties, here you can find 6 or 7 varieties of Torlak. The first of it is Krashovan, this Karashevsky, and you can compare it with standard Serbian, standard Bulgarian. This is of course standard Macedonian and not standard Macedonian. You can put the microphone to see, not to see the mistake, but you have seen it already. So, standard Macedonian. And you can see, for example, the Torlak variety is Vulch for the wolf, or Silza for the deer. And the standard Serbian would be Vuk and Suza, the standard Bulgarian Vulk and Solza, and the standard Macedonian Volk and Solza. Just to give one example how these dialects are between Serbian and Bulgarian. This is one of many, many examples. We could, of course, show the same concerning the yat or concerning other phonetic and linguistic aspects. This is just a short phonetic comparison to give an impression that really the Krashovan in many cases is between the dialects. Concerning the nowadays situation, we found a huge folklorization. It is recognized by the Romanian government. You can have all the indicators in 2 languages, which is in Romania they use. When there is more than 20% belonging to the minority language, you can have the indicators and you can have a representative in the government. The problem is if the Krashevsky, the Krashovan can have an own representative in the parliament, no, they should have a Serbian or a Croatian one. So here they belong to the Croatian minority, and that's why also they introduce the Croatian terminology when speaking about modern words. For example, the neologism primaria is, of course, is općina, and many other terms are taken from Croatian language, standard language. This is just a kind of impression of the folklore, of the costume, which is very close, for my impression, to Croatian culture, or more to some part of Croatia than with the neighboring cultures. Just to have the next point, to go to the Romance varieties, let's have a short spot on the Aromanian. You already listened to this word. Romanian, Aromanian is quite close. The origin of the term, of course, is the same. It belongs to Roma, the city of Roma, and they consider themselves Romance population. This is the word of Rome. This is a map of one of my books concerning the distribution of the Aromanians, and you can see all these spots are Aromanian settlements. You can find concentrations in the mountains and in the lower parts, as they were in the pastures in the mountains and the winter pastures close to the sea. There are concentrations, the biggest one, more than 200 villages in Greece, about 50 in Albania, and much less in the Republic of Macedonia, southwestern Bulgaria, from where they immigrated in the 20s of the 20th century to Dobruja, in 25-26, and with the change of the frontiers between Romania and Bulgaria, in 40 they changed again, and they settled into what is now Romania and the northern Dobruja. So we can find a very dispersed distribution, which make it very difficult for them to communicate from one area to another. Even in Albania, you can find a huge distribution of Aromanians, which is not at all the southernmost contribution and distribution as, for example, for the Greek minority. They are spread out until the northern part of the country, the middle especially. In the history we find a very important role as thieves, as mobile shepherds, as nomads, and all the culture has been, mostly until the beginning of the 20th century, linked with the nomadism, with the products of wool, of sheep and goat products, which is milk and butter, or here you find the pita. You find a very nomadic and mobile way of life in provisoric huts, and it is a a very huge difference and an impressive change of society. Besides this, we can find the first urban settlements in the higher Balkan mountains, in southern Albania and northwestern Greece, urban settlements made by Aromanians, as there was Voskopoja in southern Albania, with many, many different villages around. Here is the old part where the old academy has been in Voskopoja, and the most population from this village or city, which has more than 30,000 inhabitants until 1769, went to Krashovan in now Republic of Macedonia, Klisura, and Neveska Nympheo in Western Macedonia, Greece, where you can imagine how big the old urban settlements have been. The first documents, written documents, is from 1760. It is not a document with old Biblic text, which is normally the case. It is just drinking, cup, with the hint that you should not drink so much. Drink only one wine and go home, more or less. This is the sense of this text. Followed 1733 one by an inscription in Srebrenica, Ardenica in Albania with 3 languages, Albanian, Greek and Aromanian, all of them in Greek letters. And in the same period, around the end of the 18th century, 2 dictionaries appeared with grammatical transcription and the comparison of 3 or 4 languages, which is in the example of the 4 language dictionary from Daniel Moschopoulitis, in the following 4 languages: Romaica, today you would say Greek, Vlachica, today you would call it Aromanian, Bulgarica, today you would call it in this area Macedonian, and Arvanitica, which is today Albanian. And you can find the fact that all these languages are written with the Greek alphabet. This is the start of the Aromanian Aromanian writing. The leader of Moldova, and huge and big, famous Demeter Cantemir, described this language with a kind of arrogancy you also find today in the Romanian attitude concerning the Aromanian language. Eine weltschlechtere Sprache. He speaks about Moldavian and how conservative has been Moldavian concerning when compared with the Latin language. Even worse language speak the Kutsovlachi, the Aromanians in Macedonia. They mix their language with Greek and Albanian, and sometimes they start to speak more Greek than Aromanian, or they put Albanian phrases in their Vlach language. But all the verbs and the subjectives, they remain Moldavian. And this Kaudat Welsh, even Welsh derives from Vlach, but anyway, and this mix of language, they understand, only they can understand this language. No Greek, no Albanian, no Moldavian, Romanian would ever understand them. And when they want to understand the Aromanian, they should discuss together. Greek, Albanian and Romanian should listen, and only then they can understand Aromanian. So this is the kind Demeter Cantemir described Aromanian. And I would like to give you a short feeling for how different the Aromanian varieties are, just on one example. When one Aromanian meets the other and asks, do you understand me? Everybody uses a different word. Not everybody, but here we can find the examples. We can find the Latin word prindu from appendere. Do you understand me? We can find acats from accaptare, fasten, to catch. We can find ențeleg, which you know from the intellect and from Romanian înțelegere. You can, it's also a Latin word. From Albanian, ndec or cuptoi, you can hear among the functional community of Aromanians in Albania, duchescu and cuptescu. From Greek, apikazo, which is not used anymore in Greek, you can find aitikasescu, especially in the Grammos dialects on the Greek-Albanian frontier. From Turkic, angıldamak, to call the buffalo to come. Angıldesescu. I understand, yeah, when you speak with a buffalo, it's the derived Angıldesescu from Turkish, and you can find also combination of Latin yau and Turkish habari. Yaudi habari, I understand, so I catch the news. Just to give you an insight, and you always feel where somebody is from. The tradition of Greek writing Aromanian, the Romance language in Greek letters, continues, but it's very weak and very seldom. You have to find, maybe these are in all the world, only 2 or 3 examples. This is a menu in the Aromanian village of Sirako, and you can find, for example, carne de oi. This is meat, pork, no, oi, sheep meat. Or you can find the name of the hotels, Casa Mare, Big House, La Munte, in the mountains. But nobody will use the language when writing in Greece. The initiatives to write the language are all outside of Greece, in the diaspora, or in Albania, where you can see the big festivity of the Vlachs meeting in southern Albania some years before, using the Albanian language and the Latin letters for Aromanian language, or here one of the 2 parties, unbelievable, in the Republic of Macedonia. We find 2 parties of Aromanian and culture unions also, but the minority in this country is not more than 6,000 or 7,000 every 10 years. So it is recognized, and they are they woke up. So this is the only country which motivates and provokes maybe even the minority identity of this language. And now finally we will find where this picture comes from, the Poiana Lungar. The picture was made among the Timok Vlach, which is Romanești, so more or less the same auto-denomination as Romanian, but when they speak Serbian, most of them also use Vlachki, Vlach. But usually you don't hear that we speak Vlachești. This is a map of my friend Dorin Lozovanu. Here you can find Romania. This is Serbia. In eastern Serbia you find 4 or 5 groups of Romanești speaking speakers, Romanești speakers. The one in the east is the Tseran. The word Tseran derives from Tsara, as they are from Tsara Romanațka, from southern part of Romania, which is Wallachia probably. The yellows are Unguren and Tseran mixed, and some of Rudar. This is a kind of gypsy-speaking Romanian. And you can find a huge group of the Unguren. Unguren is not Hungarian, but is from Hungary territory, which means Erdély, Transylvania. So these are linked to the southern Romania, these are linked to the Transylvanian Romania. Today there are very many folklore groups. They always quarrel about if they have Romanian or Serbian or Vlach folklore, but it is still alive. We can find a lot of architecture, a lot of costumes, instruments, meetings of the diaspora from them, because most of them live in Austria, Germany, and they meet there once a year and play their music. Here are all some of our most beautiful instruments. We could listen to all of them for hours, but I just wanted to say some instruments and some nice persons, and to speak about maybe some political aspects. We can find a party of the Timok Vlach called Neamul Românesc. We can find in Serbia a party of the Democratic Party of Romanians from Serbia, and we can also find a national day, and they quarrel if they have to have an own Vlachki national day or the Romanian national day. The problem in Serbia is that we can find a Romanian-speaking population calling themselves Român and Romanește in the Vojvodina and the Banat, and we can find the Vlachist population in the area of the Timok Valley, which has a quite different dialect and which do not identify usually with Romanians, but say themselves that they speak Romanește. In both of these groups, the church is in Serbian, and in the northern group of Banat and Vojvodina, they have Romanian schools with Romanian books for the Romanian minority, and they learn standard Romanian, maybe with a slight accent. But the Vlach population of the Timok Valley, in the eastern Serbia, Bor, Zaječar, Negati, Majdanpek, they didn't want these Romanian books usually, some of them, but there is not enough acceptance so that we do not have a Romanian school system. And since 2 years, we can find a Vlachki writing system using Serbian orthography. We will see it immediately. This was a kind of flyer concerning the census in Serbia, where in Serbian the population was encouraged to say that we feel Vlach, and in local Romanian that they feel Român. So it's more or less a tradition, a translation, but they prefer to say in Vlachki Român, Romanian, and not Vlach. Interesting. Here you can find this strange orthography from, this is kind of CD only with music, Numiș eu Dumnezeu. So you have to know Romanian and to know Serbian orthography to read this, or Croatian. Rođendan, of course, is local language. Traiu omului, ce fac cu mine. You can see when you know Romanian that this is the Banat dialect, more or less. Și e mai frumos când aș avea bani, so you can find a grapheme for the sound and so on and so on. And as we have now the moment where school manuals are being produced, we also find an online lexicon, a dictionary, as here, for example, the Vorbar, but it is a little bit full of Romanian influence too. They want to separate from Romanian politics and Romanian school books, but they cannot totally. as they also have to use new words and to use some aspects from Romanian language. So be happy that I would not continue with the next 50 minorities there are to be found in the region. No, we will concentrate maybe on the discussion which language dominates which one and how we can help maybe in the procedure and the quarrel along these varieties I presented. So these are the last point, and I hope that there will be some time to have your opinion. As an overview, I would like to come back to the first languages I mentioned, which are not our Slavonic and Romance varieties, but also the most endangered maybe in the Balkan Peninsula. Remember the Judesmo, the more or less Spanish language of the Judesmo Sephardic Jews in southeastern Europe. We have among scientists written language, but the standard is not distributed. We find the language more or less in Turkey, especially in Istanbul, Sarajevo, Sofia, Saloniki or Salonika and Bucharest, some thousand speakers today, and we find a kind of autoclaimed mother states. Israel, of course, encourages the Sephardic population, but not obviously to speak Spanish, to speak Judesmo, but more or less in the religion as they are Jewish. They have a high prestige and most of them like their Spanish language, but the problem is exactly what is more important for them, the religion or the language, and with which of these aspects they identify more with the Jewish culture. And I know a lot of Sephards, for not anymore Judesmo speakers, who prefer to learn Hebrew than to reactivate their Judesmo. There was also a PhD about this and the identity of Sephard Jews from Bulgaria in Israel, and so again that most of them prefer to learn Hebrew than to reactivate or to continue their mother tongue, Judesmo. Cappadonian Greek, no written standard. We can find some, maybe some persons only, maybe 20, maybe 10 in Greece, 1 or 2 maybe in Turkey, and of course Greece claimed as a mother for this language, as it is Greek, there are Greek speakers, but the problem is that it's quite mixed with Turkish, and as not the biggest friends of the Turkish language, most of them has a bad opinion. It's not the best auto-prestige. And this is a very difficult situation when discussing about revival, when the attitude is not that positive. The Orthodox religion, of course, combines them, how to say, put them in the neighborhood with the Greek people, not with the Turkish, of course. But the language has huge, huge Turkish influence. Istian Vlach, of course the expert sits here, but I do not have the impression that there is a distribution that the person really reads regular in Croatia their Istian Vlach language, even if it is the Vlaški part in Krušnjevica or the Žejanski in Žejane. And I'm not sure if there is around 100, but maybe we can put it like this, ask the expert. But even here, like also in the case of Meglen Vlach or Meglen Romania, Aromanian, even in this case of East-Romanian, the Romanian intellectuality and politics usually claim that they are our minority speaking a kind of Romanian. But as most of them, Romanians are not Catholics, the religion put them closer to the Croats as they are Catholics. And we have to discuss, I have been 15 years, I've not been in Istria, I don't know, I suppose and I hope, I'm sure, that you contributed to the auto-prestige of it. But when I've been last time, 15 years ago, my impression was that the auto-prestige, the own opinion about the culture was quite low. So, even in Meglen Vlach, it's interesting that we find some 500s, and Romania again is claiming it's one of the Romanian dialects. We have a small part of Muslim Meglen Vlachs today in Turkey, and I think that they are quite better speakers than the minority in Yevgenia, where they had the radio, and they had only one village. And even in Romania, we can find better Meglen Romanian in the Banat than in the biggest village, Chairman, the Dobroja, where most of them are settled, because on the one part they have only Romanian population in the area, and in the other part, Banat, the surroundings were Hungarian, German, and German, so they continued very small minority, they continue to speak. Serious danger, the next categorization is the Slavonic Greek with a few thousand speakers, which is one of the priorities of the UNESCO to save it, so Slavonian, Cappadocian Greek, and they have a high opinion of themselves. So it is astonishing good, the situation. The Balkan Romani, we have to see it's a very, very different groups, as we can find all the religions in Southeastern Europe, we can find among them, and all the national influences, but it's the only language among this group of the serious the endangered languages I put that they have usually a quite low opinion about themselves, their own language, and they are contributed all over the Balkan Peninsula. The Albanian, more or less Albanian varieties of Greece, they had attempts for teaching, but with the coming of the Albanian migration in the 19th, it changed and it became again a political debate that we are put into the same category with the Albanians, and it contributed to a disappearance of Arbanitica. We find some few hundred speakers, of course, and we have Albania as identifying them as their minority, even as most of them are Orthodox. From the Greek part, there is no activity concerning the preservation of Arbanitica or the other minorities. In Bessarabia, Ukraine, and especially also in a small part of Moldova, we can find a Bulgarian minority which is Orthodox, maybe 500,000 of speakers, very vivid today, but in high danger as they do not use their books and they do not use their language in education. And their own dialect has also a quite low prestige. The Gagauz Turk also, they do not use the Turkish written in Turkey. They are in 4 countries of Southeastern Europe. There are some 10,000 and very far away one from each other. And the only region where they use the language in written form is the autonomous Gagauz region of Moldova, where they have books. But most of them have a low prestige of their own language and prefer Russian, even in the Republic, where we have a president for this autonomous Gagauz region. But let us now come to our languages, the 4 focus varieties, and let's discuss together maybe what can be done about them. There was our examples, the Banat Bulgarian. We can find the written standard. It is fascinating that most part of the population know this standard, even that it's only 1.5 village. And there are a huge number of fluent speakers in Bulgaria, especially in Romania and the short part in Serbia. Bulgaria started some years ago again to have some activities, and it's interesting to see how they accept them. And I think in the last years they have more consciousness to refuse Bulgarian activities. They accept it concerning the folklore, and they, with love, they include Bulgarian and Macedonian folklore in their dances. It has nothing to do with the local Banat tradition, which is very, very Habsburgic, Austrian and Hungarian. But they prefer not to learn Bulgarian, not to learn and use the Cyrillic alphabet. So what we hear, what could be done, is maybe to encourage them in their distance from Bulgaria. Bulgaria could help with money maybe, but nobody in Bulgaria will help with emphasizing the local Bulgarian language and culture, but to introduce and to reactivate or to activate Bulgarian standard language. And I think that it was decisive for the region that the Catholic Christian religion contributed to the survival of Banat Bulgarian in the predominant Romanian Orthodox region, and the author prestige is very high, so that the possibility to preserve this variety is probably the best when they remain Catholic and they are encouraged in their religion. Even in a time in which religion today is not that important as it has been 100 years before. But it should be, it seems to be the decisive role of the language preserving in Romania and Serbia. The Krashovan is a compact area of 5.5 villages. They had Croatian schools in the last time, they are very weak, and the distribution is in Romania and in Romania actually, sorry. There are only migration, but there is no authentic, this is wrong, there's no authentic villages in Serbia. And we find some 100 speakers. And interesting is, of course, that when we see the researches done about Krashovan minority in Romania, the Croatians are a little bit more active, but actually there is missing a kind of autoclaimed mother state. Probably the Croatian scientists are a little bit disturbed that they speak so Serbian-like Torlak dialect, and the Serbian researchers see that they are Catholic and they are identifying more with Croats and the Serbs, so that we have not a very good situation and only very, very few studies about them. The possibility for them to survive, of course, is also very similar with the Bulgarian. The Catholic religion plays a very huge role among them, for them concerning preserving their language, but I suppose that the help, even if it would be from Croatia or from Serbia, will be watched always with suspicion from the most of them. Among Aromanians it is even more extreme. We find this small tradition of Greek alphabet writing Aromanian, and today the diaspora Latin writer alphabet, which we can find in some Balkan countries, but it is not huge and not largely distributed. The majority of Aromanians live in Greece, and the majority of Aromanians in Greece claim that it is absolutely impossible to write Aromanians, which means that I cannot imagine that such a bastard language, as they say, they called it, can be written. So they have a very low opinion, not of their history, but of their language usually, and they prefer in Greece to speak Greek, in Albania to speak Albanian, and so on. Traditionally, Romania comports with the Aromanians with their own minority, and in the last years they intensify their activities, sending Romanian delegations to Albania and to the Republic of Macedonia, giving scholarships for Aromanian students from Macedonia or from Albania, and continuing more or less the politics which has been beginning with 1868 until the Second World War. We found the Romanian educational system with more than 100 Romanian schools and churches in the most of the Aromanian villages in Greece and Albania. Of course, this contributed to the identity, not as you may think concerning a huge Romanization of the Aromanians. No, the opposite was the case. The most of them are in a great and a huge distance and do not want to have anything to do with Romanian culture, and like to emphasize that their Aromanian is similar to Portuguese, to Italy, to all languages, one language, not Romanian. So this is, of course, nonsense, but the Romanian view that they are kind of Romanian dialect is also a little bit chauvinistic, which should not help, and which also among Romanian politicals could be emphasized, that the activism in Romania is counterproductive to the preserving Aromanian in Albania and Greece. Among the Timok Vlach, we can find this new mode to write Vlaški with Serbian-Croatian logic, but Romanian language. It is more or less accepted, but it is too early to see. They started some years ago, and we should wait to see how the reaction will be. Romania probably will not support these ideas and will insist on Romanian education in Romanian orthography. But I see some discussions which are quite productive, and I think that this election, we can see a little bit more relaxed view on distribution of national standard language about these lesser used varieties has a good effect if it is accepted. But the most countries do not want to contribute when there is not school education and so on, the national standard languages. So we arrive to our end, and I should maybe conclude in a little bit placative way that the most important things we always observed in the field, that the initiatives of the own minorities in many cases is not enough, and many of these varieties I presented today will disappear definitely, but the most important methods are to strengthen the daily role of a small variety in the everyday life and in the society, which is very difficult, and we could discuss how we can achieve this goal. And a very important thing is also the auto-prestige. I have seen so many examples that it is destructive when groups or persons want to disappear their language. They more or less will succeed in this. And when there is an ambition of a state or organization which declares and which they feel responsible for a minority group, of course, we do not have to deny and to refuse this help, but we have to find common ways, and this is very difficult when I see that in the Balkan Peninsula we find so many examples of animosities and not trusting the neighbor and not trusting the other with his initiative. So it is easy to say and a long way and a difficult way. Two projects already mentioned by Svetlana, Lazar and Vlach, try to have this attempt and to make a link between the communities and the scientists. And this is what we construct, a huge archive of videos and audios with transcription and scientific application. But this is just a small insight. And from the end now, I would like to comment why did I put this Pojana Lunga? Because this is in eastern Serbia among the Timok minority, the Timok Vlach, and this means Pojana Lunga. It is half Latin of origin and half Slav. It is a kind of broad field or too wide a field, to quote Fontane. Thanks for your attention. Sorry for being late. Have a nice time.
This great introduction into the hidden Balkans, I think, for many of us. So the time is up actually, but maybe we can take one question at least and then continue over coffee.
Ah, yeah?
Yeah. Does anyone? No more batteries?
Thank you. Since these are all minority languages, can you explain and tell us why some have higher auto-prestige and some have very low ones? The auto-prestige.
What about the auto-prestige?
Can you explain why some have higher auto-prestige and some have very low?
In these examples, I could do this, yeah, but actually, of course, it is an individual problem, not a group problem, several times. But when we can find the tendencies among a group, usually there have been political reasons for that. So bad experience in the past. When I take the fascinating examples of very good, high prestige about the examples I quote them, it's the Banat Bulgarians. They are proud of it, also because it is unbelievable that for 300 years in the diaspora, 1.5 villages succeeded to survive. Even this gives them a kind of proudness. And in the case of Aromanians, where we can find maybe 500,000 of speakers, it is the other way, as they have the political experience that they have been, that the Albanian, Greek, Romanian, Bulgarian state, that they have mistrusted them, and they became bored with having hopes in somebody to have them, though they prefer to give it up and to become undoubtedly part of a majority.
Take one more question. Yeah, you can ask it later.
Yes, because of prestige, I remember from the list you showed us the Slavonic dialect, which is spoken by some, I don't know, 2,000 people. So maybe you can tell on this example why exactly this dialect, this language more or less, has such a high prestige.
Concerning the Tsakorian dialect, there has been Max Defner, 130 years before, in the same area. And he wrote that this dialect will appear in some years, and this is the last generation. He was sure that the prestige of the language is so bad, everybody wanted to learn correct English, Greek from Athens, from Nafta, and to forget about his own Greek. But with his publication and other publication, and with the emphasizing that this is the only dialect which derives from ancient Greek, and they are the poorest Greek, and they are the best and poorer and better than the Athens Greek, the auto-image changed and turned the other way around. And now everybody is proud of something which might be not true, but it contributes to the preservation of the language.
Any other questions? Then we can move to coffee.